And I'd like to welcome you all. Good afternoon. I'm Tucker Smith. Most of you know that. On behalf of the Welcoming Committee, I wanted to welcome you to our fourth SIP Talk Learn. I realized our last one last year was the week before COVID. Everything closed down for COVID. It was March 8th. So this is our first time on Zoom, which will be a learning experience for all of us. I thank all of you who have volunteered to speak today. The idea of this, many of you have heard before, but I'll tell the story again. My son Sam lives in Portland, Oregon, and he had one of these in his backyard when RL and I visited, and it was called a Drink Talk Learn. It was a drinking game created by students at the University of Waterloo in Canada. And the deal was that you would give a PowerPoint presentation, and if you didn't finish in the 3 minutes, you would have to chug your drink. I thought, First Parish, let's call it Sip Talk Learn, and we won't add that to the mix. So Sam is actually joining us today from Portland to tell us about his passion. The goal of today is to have fun. We're not here to be critical, or it's meant to be fun and not formal, and it gives us all a chance to learn something new and learn more about each person that speaks. You will have 3 minutes to speak, those of you, the 11 speakers who are going to talk today. And that's 180 seconds, and you'll be amazed how fast it goes. Sarah's going to tell us some of the technical things that she wants us to know when I get done, but I wanted you to know that we will ring a bell at the end of the 3 minutes, and we ask that you do stop at that time and open up for questions from the gathered audience. And then after 2 or 3 questions, we will go on to the next speaker. And we are, let's see, what else do we need to know? Just that the speakers, if they will ask for raised hands of who will ask the questions, so that we don't have to keep going back between speakers. Any other questions? I welcome you all. This is really exciting to see 37 participants. And we're going to start with Sarah, and then Ben Wells will be our first speaker. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tucker. Thank you for organizing this. I was thinking about how SIP Talk Learn was the last gathering that we had before COVID hit, and it was such a fun time. And I'm so glad we're bringing it back in this format. So it'll be a fun challenge, but it'll be fun. So in this format, we are asking that everyone please remain muted throughout the program. If you are asking a question, you're raising your hand, and you can raise your hand physically, or you can use the hand raise feature that we used this morning in the sermon talk back, for those of you who had experience with that. So you can raise your hand physically or use the hand raise feature. But unmute yourself when it's your turn to ask the question, and then mute yourself again after you have asked your question. And we recommend that you view the program in speaker view. So if you are in speaker view, then the person that is speaking, which is right now me, is taking up the majority of your screen, and you just have a little row of other screens up at the top, right? Or maybe in another location if you're watching on a different kind of device, not a computer. So that's speaker view. If you're in gallery view, then everybody is the same size. So what you want to do, if that's the case, is go up to the top right-hand corner where it says view, click view, and then switch over to speaker. So right now, if you're in gallery, gallery would be checked, and then just click speaker, that will be checked, and then you'll be in speaker view. So we recommend that for viewing the program. And with that, I think we can hand it off to Ben.
Okay, so I think I know everybody here, so I don't know that I need to introduce myself too much. The title of my talk is My 2 Years at Concord Prison, which I really liked as a title. I thought that was kind of clickbait. But what I'm going to talk about is restorative justice groups that I was involved.
Ben, we lost you for some reason. Can you unmute yourself again?
How far did I get?
You said restorative justice.
Okay, so restorative justice, I have been, well, up until the lockdown, I'd been running restorative justice groups at the prison for a couple years, and it really is a passion of mine. Uh, when I heard about this and signed up, somehow I thought I had 20 or 30 minutes to talk, and I thought, well, that'd be about the right amount of time to tell people about this program, this astounding program. But 3 minutes, it's impossible. So I'll tell one or two anecdotes, and anybody that's interested, please, I'd love to talk. Better yet, anybody that's interested to become involved as a facilitator. It's a spectacular program. So I'll assume that you know the basic idea of restorative justice, that there are multiple ways to view crime. Punishment is one, but another one is to look at the harm that was caused by the crime, and how do you redress that harm. Um, so that's the basic idea. Oh, I'm already 30 seconds behind. So in the groups at the prison, the idea is to look inward and come to terms with who you are, how you got to this point of committing a crime, and what was the harm that you caused. Um, so I'm thinking about two men from the program, and how they described their responsibility for taking a life. And one of them said he felt about 90% responsible. He hadn't pulled the trigger. And there's a way in which he was absolutely right. You know, if I'd had his upbringing, I would have been in the same position. Um, the other guy, he actually said 92%. He had thought about the percentages a lot. The other guy said he was 100% responsible. He had not pulled the trigger either, but he said, look, if I wasn't there, it wouldn't have happened. It's my fault. I was responsible. He's not blind to the circumstances of his life. It's just a different way of looking at it. So, which one of the two do you think is the person that's less burdened? Who's the freer man? And the strange thing is, it's the guy that took the 100% responsibility, because at that point he could accept what he had done, who he had been, but then pivot to who he wanted to be in the future. Whereas the other guy was still back in how 92, 90% responsibility. Oh, I'm out of time. Well, it's a fascinating topic. I was going to tell you the story that everyone's heard about the guy next to me having a fabulous day at the prison, but that'll have to wait for the next time. So that's my 3 minutes.
I've got a minute going here, Ben. So
Pardon?
as official timekeeper, I have another minute going for you.
Oh, well, then I'll tell you the pivot that I was going to get in after I talked about the responsibility was to say, where's my other page? So what harm, I told you about the guy with 92%, the guy with 100%. The pivot is, what harm have we caused in the world? What percentage of responsibility is ours for the way things are in the world? Are we going to argue about that it's only 67%, not that, it wasn't around 100 years ago? Or are we going to say it's 100%, it's mine? And I'll tell you that from my experience at the prison, strangely, the more empowering answer is to say, it's mine. So now I've got to be out of time. So any questions? Then I will tell in my remaining 30 seconds, I will tell the anecdote that I just love. I've told it to everybody here, I'm sure, at least once, but I think about this every day. We're in a check-in. This is my first circle at the prison. We're going around, just a sentence to take the temperature of the room. And the guy next to me says, I'm having a good day. Then he says, no, he slaps his thigh and says, I'm having a spectacular day. Now, this is a guy that's in for murder 1, which means that he will die in that prison. And yet he's having a spectacular day. And I say to myself, why don't I say that every morning when I wake up? And that's when I began to realize there was something there for me to learn. So, thank you. Done. Okay.
Can you open up to questions, Ben?
Oh, I thought I did.
Does anyone have a question for Ben? Okay.
Okay.
No, Nate, you made a very good point in the chats. And
Oh.
I think we should do that, is that when you're finished with your introduction, say start, and then you'll know when the timer goes on, okay? That's a good point. Or, all right, Barbara O'Neill.
Oh, Jenny, do you have a question?
Yes, I have a question. Do you
Oh,
go
sorry.
inside the walls of the prison, and are there any women that are serving like you?
Yes, yes. There was a extremely talented woman who was the lead facilitator until she got busy and had to go on to other things. It's a men's prison, so everyone in the room was a man. There were no prison staff present in the room, and everyone in the circle had taken a life. All the inmates.
Thank you.
And I was hoping I would get a question about criminal policy. You just see the disparities when you go in there. I don't have the time to talk about it, but we need criminal justice reform.
How often do you go?
I used to go a couple afternoons a week. They'd be 3 hours long, these sessions. It was a big deal. I just got sucked into it. I went in thinking, oh, nice, good citizen, and it was just so powerful. And apparently I was good at it. But that's enough about me.
Hi, I'm Barbara O'Neill. Many of you may know that I am a writer and I teach writing. I lead writing groups. And I've been doing this for about 10 years, and it's a real passion of mine. And one of the things I'm most passionate about is getting other people to write. So that's why I decided to talk about what I am today. So I'm starting now. When I travel, and when I used to travel, I would collect postcards. I would, hold on, let me chase. Can I see? Okay, never mind. I would buy postcards of where I was traveling. I'd buy postcards of art and postcards from museums and send them to people, kind of sending a chance to send a fragment of my travel home. And part of what I loved about doing that traveling was I'd have to go to a post office wherever I was to buy the stamps. And by standing in line all over the world, even all over this country, standing in line at a post office, you pick up a lot of conversation, you get a lot of the sort of flavor of where you are. So part of the joy of sending a postcard too is buying the stamp. I was in Ireland right before COVID hit, and I was on a walk. I was in a little village at a writing retreat, I was on a walk, but I stopped into the post office to get some stamps for some postcards. And then I realized I didn't have any money with me. And I got up to the window, and the postmistress said, "May I help you?" And I said, "I just want to know when you'll be open again because I forgot my money and I need some postcards." And she said, "Oh, dearie, just take these." And she slid them across the table to me and said, "Pay me late, come tomorrow." And the trust that she had in me was so moving. I was back there, to pay. I was just back there to see her again. But so much, it's all about communication, of all kinds. So I'm home now and I'm not traveling, but I am sending postcards. And so I'm sending the postcards that are of the mountains of Colorado. I'm sending postcards of Venice. I'm sending postcards of, Disneyland. The postcards that I have a lot of them. And so I'm beginning to just send them off to people. And a postcard's a great thing for writing because the space is very small. It's not really about the content necessarily, it's a gesture. And it's saying, I'm thinking about you and I'm sending you off this visual and I'm sending you a little message. And the message may be happy birthday. It may be thank you. It may be a poem or a thought that I've just recently had and I want to send it off to someone. And it may, most of all, it may be, how are you? And I just think getting a communication, getting something tangible in your mailbox when we are so focused on electronic communication now and how lucky we are to have it. I'm just whipping off postcards every few days. And also thanks to Barbara Slater, I was sending postcards in October to voters in North Carolina, encouraging them, potential voters to vote, which also again felt good because some of those postcards, I had to write a personal note to them, encouraging them, hoping that they would vote. So that tied into my sort of passion for postcards. And I thought of those postcards arriving in people's mailboxes from Lincoln, Massachusetts, whether they make a difference or not, who knows, but it's this gesture again of reaching out and communicating across, letting the Postal Service work for you.
That's your 2 minutes.
Okay, and my only thought I'll wrap up is sometimes I get a postcard back, which is another amazing gift. So thank you. Any questions?
I don't have a question for you, though I didn't raise my hand, but I'm going to pile on a little bit because when my mother was really lost her hearing and really couldn't talk on the phone, I took to sending postcards and got my siblings involved. And then when she passed away, we got all the postcards back. And it was,
Wow, nice,
so good.
nice, great.
I'd like to make a comment. Bob and I went to China in 1983 when Beijing had no hotels, and we stayed in a government guest house. But going to the post office there was a real event because they knew you were a Westerner, and they just parted company, and you went to the head of the line. They wanted to hear what you were going to say because they studied the BBC, and their English was all English accented, and they wanted to hear an American. They wanted to hear what you were going to say.
That's great. Wonderful.
What kind of images do you, sorry.
Yeah, Nate?
My mistake, sorry. Different Zoom. What kind of images do you like to put on postcards?
Well, it's interesting to say put on postcards because
choose,
often I'll have a postcard that doesn't interest me that much, and I'll glue a photograph on it.
Cool.
Or I'll glue some interesting paper. Like I also make postcards out of old postcards that I don't want to use. But in general, well, I have a lot of art postcards because when I go to museums, I want to take the art home with me. So I buy the postcard. But now what? So I'm trying to send those out. And by the way, museums, as well as visitor centers, don't have many postcards anymore. They're getting harder and harder to find because people are taking pictures with their phone. They don't need to send a postcard and buy a stamp. So it amazes me how hard it is to find them now.
Oh, should a message?
I see Sarah Bishop has her hand raised.
I just have a very, very quick postcard story about Mrs. Fullerton, who was the postmistress in the Lincoln Center post office. And I had always heard that she felt that postcards were fair game to read since they weren't tucked in an envelope. And so I thought, I'm going to send a postcard with some news on it. So I sent a postcard that said, "Dear Mom and Dad, exciting news, I'm getting engaged." And she obviously read it because when my parents came in for their mail, she said, "Oh, I'm so excited about Sarah's engagement." Well, I wasn't engaged.
I've heard postcards likened to skywriting. Like it's public. Everybody can read, just know that everyone can read it. Is that a hand up? Anyway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chris.
All right. I'm Chris Andresiak, and you might not know it, but I am quite famous here in town, at least among the 5-year-olds. They know me as Coach Chris, and it's because I am the commissioner of Lincoln T-ball. So let me tell you about it, a couple quick anecdotes and some life lessons that I have taken. So T-ball is baseball, but for 4 and 5-year-olds. And it's all about fun and learning a little bit of baseball. We have cheers, we have team names, and the names of the teams are the Muck Dogs and the Lake Monsters and the River Cats and the Sidewinders. Here's my Sidewinders hat. You can see the snake on there. And they're real minor league teams. It actually was the Tucson Sidewinders. We use concepts like the bird, or Feed the Giant to help the kids learn how to throw, and the Alligator to help them learn how to catch ground balls. And by the end of the season, we hope the kids know which hand to put their glove on, that when they hit the ball, they run that way, not that way. That's the first base, and which base is which. And when and if they catch the ball, that they know that they're supposed to throw it in the general direction of first base. And if they know those things, that's great. But most of all, if they can't wait to come back the next week or the next season, then that's when we really have succeeded, because it is all about fun. So just a few anecdotes to give you a sort of a picture of it. First of all, we have kids that are totally into it with baseball pants, cleats. They can mimic the stance of all the Red Sox players. And then others feel like picking dandelions and making piles of dirt where the shortstop stands is the best part of it. And either way, it's all good. We have had kids that put their batting helmet on backwards, or they hold the wrong end of the bat. We have the girl who had ballet class after T-ball, and so she would wear her tutu to T-ball with the baseball shirt on over it. We have kids that are trying so hard to learn how to throw, but they just can't get all the limbs working together, and they end up kind of moving forward in a sort of jerk motion, and the ball ends up going backwards, and they end up on the ground, and it's just it's great. You can picture the look of the intense look of determination of the little boy that I remember, who was barely taller than the tee, and he's grasping that bat, and he is trying so hard to hit that ball with the bat. And you know, his shirt is down below his knees, and it was great. And we have kids that try to learn how to slide, and honestly, it looks like a crash landing. It's just great. So I could go on and on, but I don't have enough time. But let me just close with a few life lessons I have picked up from my time as commissioner. First of all, enthusiasm can be infectious. Second of all, a high five or a fist bump goes a real long way. Third, uniforms are great. And if you can wear spikes and eye black, that is even better. It's important to shake hands at the end of the game. It's great to have a team cheer. Patience is really valuable. And with a little bit of practice, you can make a lot of progress. So from the commissioner, that's my story. Any questions?
Oh,
Let's see.
Paula. And Barbara.
Let's see, Deanna, yes. I remember you from T-ball, Deanna.
Yeah, so I was a coach on Jacqueline's team.
That's right, I remember that. Was it the bees, maybe?
Yeah, Chris, what a
I was
memory! And we just moved, as you know, a few months
Yeah,
ago.
we just moved, and I actually today found this trophy.
Oh, nice. Very good.
2006, the bees, and yeah, she was my coach.
I'm quite famous among the 5-year-olds, but by the time they get to be 7 or 8, they usually have forgotten me. So I'm honored that you still remember T-ball.
I remember you.
It was like herding kittens. That's what I.
Oh yeah, totally.
But lots of fun. Thank
Awesome.
you, Chris.
Yeah. Any others?
I see Rachel Mason.
Rachel, yes.
I'm just, I would have loved to have had you as the head for my grandson when he was a little guy. He's 20 now, but one of my fondest memories of him was when all the rest of the boys were, in quotes, playing baseball. He was so intrigued with his shadow as the sun was going down. And I was watching him, and I thought it was the dearest thing, seeing this little guy looking. He wasn't watching the ball. He had zero interest in the ball. He had great interest in his shadow, which was getting longer and longer, you see. It was wonderful. Just a wonderful memory.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Anything else? All right. I can't remember who is next, but over and out.
Bishop.
Hi, in case I run out of time, I just want to let you all know that we all lived happily ever after. So the sky was cloudless. and there was a crispness to the air, the perfect afternoon for our meditation hike. Promptly at 1:30, we gathered at the Robots, listened while Andy shared with us the rules for our walk. Be thoughtful about not talking, keep 50 feet between each walker, and stressing, most importantly, to be certain that the walker behind you follows you if there is a sharp turn or fork in the trail. And then we set off. The trail meandered through the piney and heavily oaked woods, past the marshes with their frozen hummocks, and along the brilliant waters of Fairhaven Bay. Ahead, walkers slowed to read the plaque on the Robinson Summer Estate, turn of the century stone boathouse. I, too, read the first few sentences as the walker ahead of me had done, and then looked up to continue on my way. But wait, where was the walker ahead of me? Just feet past the boathouse, the trail continued ahead, but also took a sharp turn up the high bank to a terrace. My face flushed with embarrassment as I broke the silence to ask a few behind me if I should continue straight ahead or take the right up the bank. I'm assured that it's best to continue straight. So Carol Carmody and I forge ahead. And I told her that I thought it was odd that there weren't any fresh footprints. The trail then became muddy, quickly narrowed, and even disappeared altogether in a few places where the shore of the bay had washed over it. Well, I'm thinking this trail is probably a little more challenging than the one Andy had billed it to be, especially because the trail then took a sudden turn up the bank, requiring me to grab the trunks of small trees to pull myself up. Well, I thought to call Andy, but I only had his Gmail. Works for a text, but not a call. Well, I knew Tucker was ahead of me, so I thought to use our secret call to send out an SOS of sorts. Woohoo! But nothing back. Well, a soft echo from across the bay was returned. Yoo-hoo! Yoo-hoo! Again, and still only the soft woo-hoo back. My phone suddenly chirps, a text coming through. Oh, thankfully it's Tucker. Did we lose you? Yup. At the bottom of the boathouse, we went up the stairs. Oh, well, some of us went straight. We'll turn around and catch up. I had no idea as to how many we were. But as I started off towards the front end of because I had started off towards the front end of the line, but I shouted back to the others to turn around and head back to the boathouse. We eventually met up with the others and continued on with them to an open field. And once there, we created a huge circle and were asked to share what we had noticed or experienced during our walk. Each of us took a turn raising our voice. The blue of the sky, the serenity following the events of the week, the hollowed out tree, the stillness of the air, the sun sparkling on the water. And for me, I once was lost, but now I'm found. And I thought I was the only one. To be continued.
Okay, I have to confess that Sarah got extra time because I got so involved in her story, I forgot to unmute the microphone when the timer went off.
I timed mine and it was 3 minutes and 17 seconds.
Right.
Confession.
For the 17 seconds.
Any questions?
Sarah, can you hear me?
Yep.
Will you attend the next meditation walk after this experience?
Oh, I think it's going to be continued next. You'll see.
Okay.
Jackie?
Hi, I'm Jackie Lenth, and I was also on this walk. Sarah was at the beginning of the trail of hikers, and I was at the very end. As we started off, we got a little bit of a slow start. Some of the people had arrived at the last minute, didn't hear all the instructions, but we got most of the rules out, which is we walk about 50 feet apart and we are, for the most part, silent. As I walk ahead and get to the first turn, I turn around and wait, but I wait quite a long time. The bank was steep, and I think some of the hikers were not quite used to hiking in the woods. So I had to wait there quite a while. But finally, the hiker comes along with a mask and hat. I wasn't sure who it was, but I clearly caught the person's eye and I signaled that I was going this way. There was no question that the person saw me. So then I turn around because now the gap between the hikers has gotten long enough that it's a little bit unclear where the next hiker is. I do know the trail, so I knew the route. So I start hiking up the trail, but then when I look back just to make sure, that person had actually turned right instead of left. And so like Sarah, I decided to break the rules and I first call out, hey, hey, and then I go with my fingers, cannot get the person's attention. So I basically run back. By this time, the next hiker is coming along, who I think was Tally, and she follows the first hiker. So like a sheepdog, now I have two hikers going the wrong way. I managed to yell and get Tally's attention and say, the person's going the wrong way. Go get them and come back, but I have to stay here in case the next group coming through also turns in the wrong way. So like a sheepdog, I'm doing my job, trying to gather all these sheep together. Tally goes up the trail to find right turn guy, whoever that was, and comes back to say, he's actually not with our group. my sheepdog tendencies, and instincts were good, but definitely misguided. Tally goes on, and no one was lost. But I think the lesson I learned in this was probably learned a long time ago, and that's that we really do have to look out for each other, even strangers, especially now where there's such stress in our lives. And I kind of have thought back to a time when I was 18 and I was hitchhiking in Europe on my own, which probably was a little bit adventurous for the times, but in those days it was safer to hitchhike. And I had just hiked along the Ring of Kerry and was coming back to take a ferry that went over to Wales. And it was late in the day. And as I'm walking in Dublin toward the ferry stop, it's in a pretty dicey neighborhood, let's say. And they, it's getting dark and I'm heading toward the ferry and this man comes along from the opposite direction in a pickup truck and basically stops and says, what are you doing here? This isn't a place you should be hitchhiking. And he said, it's just not safe. I said, well, I'm just going to the ferry. I know it's just a few miles up. He said, there's no ferry this late at night. You can't go to the ferry. The next one doesn't run till the morning. So he clearly doesn't know what to do with me. Here's this hippie that's a little grubby because I'd been sleeping out in a sleeping bag, in the rough. And so he says, get in the truck and I'll bring you, to my house. You've got to stay somewhere tonight. You can't, there's no youth hostel in this Dublin warehouse district. So he puts me in his car. He takes me home to his family and his wife greets us at the door. And she is, I can tell, not pleased. This is not what she was hoping her husband would drag in, like some old alley cat, but she makes the best of it. And over the course of the evening, as I tell stories to the children, and she does ask me at one point what my religion was. And I did say Protestant, they were Catholic. And of course, this is Ireland in 1970, which is not, religion was an issue, not necessarily the main issue about the nationalism, but I was a little nervous about that. But we didn't, and as a good family does, we avoided talking about religion. And they made a sofa up for me and I slept there overnight. And early in the morning, the man was going to take me to the ferry stop. But the woman left very, very early and basically went to her church and brought me back a little thing of holy water. And as I left the house, she said, I don't want you to think that, I know this isn't something you believe in, but I do. And I believe this holy water will keep you safe. And
okay,
so,
it's time. Jackie, I don't know why my bell's not working, but.
Oh, okay. So
we're-
if anybody has questions, just to wrap it up, I really feel that maybe the holy water kept me safe. Maybe it was the man who picked me up and thought, even though this wasn't what he usually did, that he thought to, like a shepherd, gather me up and keep me safe. Any questions?
It's a cool story. I don't have any questions, but that's, I'm glad you're okay.
Okay, but that was true of the walk. I mean, we had all these dramatic stories of people turning left and right, but at no time, everyone was watching out for each other. You know, no one would have gotten left behind.
It's nice to hear about good times when you could hitchhike and run into friendly people and nobody was so anxious.
Ben, did you have a question?
I was only going to ask if the holy water protected you, but it sounds like it did.
I'm here now.
Yeah.
But I
What
think
did
more
you do with the
importantly,
holy
that
water?
that man protected me. I mean, he picked me up. I mean, there are totems and things that keep us safe, but we keep each other safe too.
You know, a lot of us have wonderful hitchhiking stories. It was a good time.
Maybe sometime, how about we do a Sip Talk Learn of all of our stories of adventures where it was close. There are many.
Yeah.
Jackie, I hope you never told your mother that story.
My mother thought I was hitchhiking with another friend, what our parents don't know.
Okay, great. Sam, you're up.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. So I am Sam Smith. I am Tucker and RL's son. And I do many things. But one of the things that I do is I teach at a school for ecological design in Arizona. And I have attempted to shoehorn a lecture, like an hour-long lecture that I have, into 3 minutes. I made a corresponding video that I know will keep me on time, but the spacing I think is going to be a little quick. And I'm going to need to screen share though. So give me 1 second while I figure that out, and then I will try and narrate it. And when the video starts, that should be my time. Does that all sound good? Cool.
Ooh, Sam, looks like you froze for a moment, but that's not a problem. It's probably just the computer.
He's just very intent, that's all.
Yes.
Very intent. You guys can still hear me?
Yeah.
Can you see? It doesn't seem to be screen sharing. It's recording. I don't know why. Sorry about this.
I think the host has to enable screen sharing.
That's
Do you see share screen down at the bottom of your?
I'm on my iPad, so it's on the top and I see it, but when I hit it, it says screen, photos, Dropbox, all these things, and I don't see how to just
I think click
Sarah, mine says host has disabled screen sharing.
Oh no, I did not do that. Hold on.
Sorry to be the difficult one.
You're not at all. I'm sorry. Okay, let me.
Yeah, so Sarah, that's going to be an issue for me too.
See if it's working now. I switched over to all participants can share.
Okay, that looks okay, but that's only.
I saw one little shot of a bus.
That's probably my little like icon thing. So screen. But it just goes to screen recording, and that's not what I want. I don't understand it.
Do you have a link to the video you can send me and I can screen share?
Yes.
We'll come back to you.
Sam, I'd love to hear about ecological design. If you just want to talk to us.
I would love to talk about it, but I spent all day making this thing. Let's see.
It'll work eventually. We all learn something new when we do these things.
Oh, yeah.
So Sam, why don't you send it to Sarah and maybe we'll go on to the next person. How does that sound?
Sure.
And come back with you.
Okay, let's do that. Sorry about that.
Sam, I'll message you my email address.
Okay.
So Lucy, do you mind jumping in at this time?
Nope, I can jump in. Well, I guess I'll jump in before I'm on the screen, or I guess I don't know if I'm on the screen. So anyway, in the summer, I go to Long Island, where I've gone my entire life. One day this summer, when I was returning home to my house on the beach, Paul McCartney was coming out of my house. His car was there, and he said that he just wanted us to know that someone would be coming to pick it up while he was sailing. Turns out when he went into the house, my husband was taking a nap. Paul called out. Reynolds said, come on, I'm up in the bedroom, come on up. So they chatted, Reynolds asleep or waking up from his nap, and Paul in my bedroom. Paul using our beach goes back almost 30 years. He rented our beach to sail his sunfish from. After about 10 years, he wanted to approach us to buy the property. It was 3 house lots. And this was before cell phones, and we all had call waiting. I came back to the family house, having heard that Paul would call it to pick a time to meet with us. My brother was on the phone at the time, and I interrupted him to say that Paul was going to call and to make sure to push the button to flip to his phone call. Sure enough, Paul did call a minute later, and my brother had to hang up on an old friend that he hadn't talked to in 15 years. He was a little miffed. 13 years ago, I built a house on the same beach. Other than the visit at the family house, I had not really spent any time with Paul at all. Now I see him almost every day when he parks in my driveway. He has 2 cars in Long Island, a Rolls Royce that he bought in 1969 and a Bronco from 1985. He's very frugal. He rarely has a new car. He is always entertaining. One time I mentioned that I thought he was one of the 5 most famous people in the world. He asked me who the other 4 were. One very foggy day, he arrived to go sailing, and I commented that I thought it was not safe because he wouldn't be able to see anything. He thought a minute and then sang a song to me, telling me that I could not tell him what to do. We still laugh about that to this day, as he got miserably lost when he tried to write down some lyrics for a song on his iPhone. And when he looked up, he had no idea where he was. I do talk about what would happen if he died on one of these sailing missions, as I would feel responsible. He then told me a story about flying in a private plane with Lorne Michaels. And Lorne said that if they crashed, the headlines would be all about Paul McCartney and some other guy. My husband has been working on some filing in our garage there for the last 2 years. Paul finds this amusing and stops in whenever Reynolds is there. I think Paul finds talking to my husband a lot more interesting than chatting with me. Often he will stop by for a half a beer. It is always a thrill and fun to chat with him. He used to bring his then 10 to 13-year-old daughter, who loved hanging out in my hot tub. We became fast friends on Instagram. He is quite the creature of habit, and his Long Island life is usually late July to Labor Day. This year, though, he appeared in May. His tour had been canceled, and he had nothing better to do.
Okay, you're at time.
Okay, perfect. Any questions?
Just kind of cool. Nice friend you have there.
It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. We actually, we don't take it for granted. It's a thrill every time he shows up.
Who's Paul McCartney?
Paul McCartney.
You're too young to know.
Everybody knows Paul McCartney.
Was he a Beatle when you met, or was this post-Beatle?
No, I didn't meet him. I really only met him about 20 years ago when he wanted to buy the property. Of course, we had no intention of selling it to him. We just wanted him to come over, and we wanted to meet him.
So Sam, are you ready now?
I am, and I sent the video, and I'm not sure how that will play, but it has no audio. So once it goes, I would narrate over it.
Okay.
Sarah, are you all
I got
set?
it. I have it. So I'll play it and then you should be able to speak over it. There might be a little bit of audio interference because Zoom is Zoom, but
Sure.
let's give it a shot.
Okay, so the name of my talk is Trash Eating Robots and the End of the Anthropocene. So it needs to be backed up. There it is. So the Anthropocene is the current geological epoch that we potentially inhabit, defined by the effect of human civilization on the biosphere. And that is without precedent, or is it? So 360 to 300 million years ago was a period of time called the Carboniferous period, in which plants evolved the ability to synthesize lignin and cellulose, but no bacteria or fungi existed at the time that could break it down again. So for 60 million years, trees just grew and fell over and were sedimented over and didn't decay and didn't release their energy or nutrients back into the biosphere, creating a layer of organic material that all of the world's coal comes from. The discovery of coal and later oil leads to the defining feature of the Anthropocene, which is buildup of carbon in the atmosphere and waste plastics in our ecosystems. Plastics are actually very much like cellulose and lignin. They're long chains of molecules, organic molecules. And the question that I'm so interested in that I've been pursuing is, how do we create systems that can break down these wastes again and use them in the same way that living organisms do? So for years, I've been working on this system. And this has involved creating a 3D printer that prints directly from recycled shredded plastic. This is something I call the trash printer. And it just takes the flakes, melts them, and turns them into new things. But it doesn't really break them down. This is my progress over the last couple of years, my experiments, and the difference in the quality of those prints. But plastics can also be broken down into energy. They can be completely decomposed. You can actually burn plastics with the right materials and resources. Like if you do it right, you can burn it. And there's really no difference between the biological breakdown of biomass and the chemical thermal decomposition of biomass. What happens is they get hot, the molecules break apart into their constituent molecules, and all of those molecules are then flammable. And so you can put them into an engine and use them to run a generator. So here I'm using wood, but that wood gas, the power generated from breaking down biomass, is producing that light. And now I'm trying to figure out how to use the energy produced from the breakdown of biomass to run this open source plastic shredder that I have, so that I can use the energy from breaking down trash to run the shredder to make the flakes that I can feed to the trash printer in order to make a self-sustaining system that eats trash very much like a organism does. And my hope is that that system will be a thing that will end the Anthropocene the way that the evolution of white rot fungi, which I didn't have time to get into very much, ended the Carboniferous period. Thank you. Whew, that's a lot to get into 3 minutes.
That's fantastic, though, man. That was great.
Was
I'm
that-
going to look
was
up your
that really-
website.
Was that really, I don't know, like choppy for you guys? It was for me. The video?
Yeah, the video was a bit choppy, but like it was
Yeah.
all understandable. It seemed to me. Well, to me anyway.
The video, just the video, is in the links on Vimeo, so you can watch it. It should be, if it weren't streaming through Zoom, it would probably be, smoother.
Yeah, I was watching it on Vimeo because I was the one sharing it, and the video looks great. The video is in the chat box, so.
Yeah, we didn't have any frame of reference, so it looked fine. We didn't know it was supposed to be different.
Good. Well, great.
So Sam,
Barbara?
So this is a way to deal with plastic waste. Right?
And any dry biomass. Yep.
So I just want to thank you for all the work you're doing. You know, you're really doing this cutting edge stuff, and I'm really admiring you're doing that. I'm sorry you didn't have this much enthusiasm when I taught you in Sunday school in first grade at First Parish. But I'm happy
I was
that,
thinking about that too.
but I'm really excited to see what you're doing now. I'm like, that is important work. So thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
So Sam, this is Katie. It looks like you're still heating at high temperatures, or so do you not have any trouble with release of toxics from the pyrolysis of the plastic?
Well, so currently I've been playing with pyrolysis of biomass primarily. I'm interested in getting to a system because I know that it is theoretically possible to make diesel out of waste plastics and to make other kinds of fuel. But I have not, that's not what I was showing in those videos. It's kind of where I'm interested in going. And for that exact reason is that you have to be very careful that you fully break down everything. Otherwise you can create toxic compounds. But the way that you break it down and then you run it through a condenser, which causes anything heavier than a certain amount to fall out. And then the gases that remain gaseous are all going to be smaller than about 5 carbon atoms long. So smaller than gasoline molecules. And so you feed them into a gas generator or engine and they get burned up. And then optionally, depending on what you're doing, you can also filter and scrub the exhaust gas to ensure that nothing is coming out that shouldn't be coming out. But it's relatively straightforward. And people have been doing this, you know, the cracking oil and turning it into fuel people were doing, you know, in Texas on their, you know, at the turn of the century. It's not rocket science. So it can be a backyard technology.
So now you just know that if somebody asks me what my son does and I sort of hesitate for a bit, now you know why. It's really sort of hard to describe all this, but it's very cool.
Sam, for those of us who couldn't quite keep up with all of the slides, I have a question about the way the process starts. You basically have to use a good bit of energy, I take it, in order to get through the first step. So that's what you're trying to compensate for in the last step to make it circular?
Well, there's two things, and I wish that I could have gotten into this more, but like, if you can make fuels from plastics, you can make fuels from woody biomass. What I've been working on mostly is woody biomass. So yeah, you put in energy initially that causes the biomass to break apart into smaller molecules, and then those smaller molecules can be used as fuel to generate energy. If you do that with wood, then the residual carbon left over is charcoal, biochar, which you can either add to the soil, which sequesters it, or you can burn it for energy. And it also contains a lot of energy. So it is an energetically positive process, very similar to eating food. You know, you eat food, you break it down, you gain the energy, and you spend some energy to digest it, but the energy that you get out of it is more than you put in. So from an energetic perspective, it is possible to make systems that you put in energy up front to digest it, but then the energy you get out is greater than what you put in.
So you're optimistic that this might be the desirable future rather than a crusade to somehow get rid of plastics?
I think we have to get rid of the plastics that we've already produced anyway. And like one of the most useful properties of plastic is that nothing eats it. I think that's sort of a fundamental problem with anyone who's like, we need to create bioplastic that can decompose, because the usefulness of plastic is that it doesn't decompose. So we have to be the organism that breaks it down, unless we want to wait 60 million years for something to evolve to do it for us. And we don't have that kind of time.
Any other questions before we head on? Okay, next is Nate Gundy.
Nate, you gotta unmute.
Oh, there we go. Hi, guys. I guess, Mom, if you want to start timing at any point, I can just get going.
You're just gonna plunge in. No, you have to do an introduction because you are
Okay.
a
I didn't.
new face to the congregation, you know?
My name is Nate, and I'm Jenny's son, Walter's son. I manage educational programs at the Edward Kennedy Institute for the U.S. Senate.
Okay, so now I have to see if I can share my screen.
If not, I got your PowerPoint in the email.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. It's asking me, you know, what do I want to select, a whiteboard, an iPhone, iPad, or a screen? I've never seen
So
this.
if you look underneath whiteboard, iPhone, iPad, iPhone, it should be right below that. There should be different screens that you have open.
Yeah, ordinarily that would be what it is, but you know, I mean, I do Zoom all the time. I've never seen this before. Let's see, portion of screen. This is very strange. I don't know what is going on here. Files. No, it's not really giving me the files that I want.
Are you
So-
in advanced or basic mode up on the top?
I've looked at all three, and the screen actually is showing.
We got your email.
Oh, now you got my email, so it picked something. That's weird. Okay, no, I want to stop sharing that. And I want to share. Let's get this up. Let me see if it shares this now. Do you seeing the state of global air?
Yes.
Yes, you are. Okay,
We
so
got
let's
it.
make it a slideshow. Where is this? Just hit slideshow. Okay. All right. Do you see that there? Okay. So I'll just introduce myself. Most of you know who I am. I'm Katie Walker, and I've spent about 40 years working on environmental health issues, the last 12 of them at a place called the Health Effects Institute in Boston, which is a public-private partnership that was set up about 40 years ago to provide independent research on the health effects of air pollution. And about 5 years ago, I took over their global health program, and in collaboration with a group with the Global Burden of Disease Project at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, we started the State of Global Air, which is an open access platform for air pollution and health effects data for countries all around the world. And what it is really an effort to provide the data and evidence to answer important questions that we need to be able to answer for setting public health priorities. In particular for air pollution, you know, how important is air pollution relative to other important environmental, behavioral, dietary, and other risk factors? Where in the world are the biggest impacts of air pollution? Where should we be focusing our efforts? So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. And we have a website, as you'll see, and you can certainly explore these data to your heart's content at another time. So this is a really busy figure here. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it does answer the question at the global level of how important air pollution is as a contributor to premature mortality. And what the big surprise, I think for me, having worked in this field for a long time, when you sort of tally up all the numbers and do the analysis, that ambient particulate matter, this is very fine particulate matter, about 1/30th the diameter of a human hair that can be inhaled deeply into the lung, ranks about 6th globally in terms of its contribution to overall premature mortality in the world. Coming even ahead of things like infectious disease and poor water quality and sanitation, things that one thinks of particularly in the developing world as being very important. Also, household air pollution coming from the burning of solid fuels in unventilated homes, which is a problem for still nearly half the world's population. So where are these particulate matter levels, these PM 2.5 air pollution levels, the highest? And what percentage of the populations in these areas live with levels above the WHO air quality guidelines for healthy air, which are about 10 micrograms per meter cubed? So this little heat diagram shows you that, you know, the highest concentrations in the world tend to be in the areas of Africa, South and East Asia. India in particular has among the highest concentrations in the world, on average 83 micrograms per meter cubed, with nearly all their population living above levels that are considered healthy for human life. The US, by contrast, is actually relatively clean, with concentrations on an annual average basis of about 8, with only about 5% of our population above the WHO guidelines. So how does this translate into where the most deaths are, the premature deaths attributable to particulate matter in the world? Well, not surprisingly, a lot of them actually appear in South and East Asia, in India and China, where the world's largest populations exist and where concentrations are also highest. But in populous countries like the US also, and in Russia, even where concentrations are relatively low, the burden of disease from air pollution can still be pretty high.
We hit 3 minutes, Katie.
Okay, so I'll just finish up quickly to say, what kind of impact has this had? I mean, one anecdote has been that when we first launched this, we told, we had it as a headline that India's air quality was taking over China's as the poorest in the world. And China had been, at that point, the poster child for bad air quality. It made the top levels of India's government very angry and upset, which we thought was a huge success. And India actually, in fact, has gone on to really pay much more attention to its air quality, and it's got a ways to go, but it shows the power of open access to data. So there you go. Are there any questions?
Katie, when you talk about air quality pollution, are you talking about primarily from cars, buses, trucks, power plants? How do you look at the source?
Well, the sources really differ around the world. I mean, the relative importance of them differ not only around the world, but within countries. So, within cities, those might differ. But where, particulate matter is a product of combustion. So anything, where that relies on combustion for power, whether it's cars and transport of all kinds, shipping, as well as power plants and so on, are sources of particulate matter. But even agriculture, I mean, there are things, particulates are also formed through secondary processes, not really necessarily directly emitted from these sources. And unfortunately, I've left just before we have completed a full analysis of the major sources in every country of the world. And those will be on our website next year, but I won't be running it because I've retired. Yeah, Ben.
You can try. How far do particulates of this size travel?
Travel where, in the body, or
no, through the stratosphere, through air, through winds.
No, they're very much a regional pollutant, so they can be transported many miles away. So in fact, I mean, one of the reasons that makes it possible to sort of estimate these on a large national scale is that they are a regional pollutant, and they are dispersed, and they tend to be kind of like a blanket that covers an area. Within
they settle?
Not so much really, because these are really 2.5 microns, so they don't settle very much. No.
Katie?
Yeah.
Barbara Sampson. Does the organization have any clout? I mean, it comes out with these data, some of them quite damning. How do they have an impact on public policy?
Well, HEI, has had some of its biggest impacts on public policy in the U.S. But what, I think what this work did was, for the first time, sort of using the global burden of disease comparative framework, showed the relative impact in countries that had been denying that their air pollution was bad, that it had any impact on public health, and it provided resources to non-governmental organizations and to reporters to get the information out. And so we have, we're widely reported by newspapers around the world. And so it's kind of kept it on the front burner in ways that it wasn't so possible before, when people didn't have access to these data. And Health Effects Institute has worked internationally for a number of years before I took over the program, and has a very strong reputation for being an impartial research organization. But it's not to say, it's always problematic when you go into another country and sort of tell them that they're doing things wrong. And so a lot of what we do is partner with local organizations to try and create spokespeople within those countries to use the data and speak for it, and to add to, whatever data might be existing in the country, so that they can really tell the story from their own perspective.
Thank you.
Okay, I know everybody's going to have more questions, but I think we better keep going. And so, John Legates, you're next.
Okay, can you put me on the screen? All right.
I see you.
Okay, good. I don't see me. My name is John Legates. My principal situation in Lincoln, and my sole credential for speaking at this forum, is I live next door to Tucker. So ready to start. This is nothing more than the account of a micro adventure, which I had many years ago, and which stands out in my mind both for its level of pleasurability and its implausibility, or perhaps I should say combination of implausibilities and coincidences. So my friend Steve and I were bumming around northern New England in 1960. We were both teenagers. We were hopping freights and hitchhiking and working odd jobs and sleeping in the woods wrapped up in our ponchos. And one afternoon in August, we were hitchhiking through Vermont and were picked up by two guys in a pickup truck. And we started talking. And by the time we'd been 10 minutes, we already knew we liked each other. And they invited us to join them for dinner. They were two gay men who had retired from being librarians in New York City, bought a building in Vermont, and moved into it, and were changing it. So we went there. We had a wonderful dinner. They let us use the shower, which improved our odor greatly. And then they said, let us show you the place. The building turns out to have been the dormitory for the world's largest croquet wicket factory, which had burned down in 1950. And the company went out of business, put the thing up for sale, and they'd bought it for $1. It had 40 bedrooms, as well as a kitchen and a common space. And I said, let me show you what we've been doing. What they'd been doing is going around to auctions, buying things, particularly pianos and organs, whenever they got a new instrument, they would take one of the bedrooms and move the walls around until it was just the right fit for it. And they had this house full of pianos and organs. Turns out, here's the great coincidence, my friend Steve was an outstanding classical organist. As a teenager, he had, at age 15, he'd been organist and choir master at 2 churches in his hometown. And being too young to drive, he would bicycle between the 2 churches every Sunday. So we spent the rest of the evening playing Bach on pedal organs and bellows organs and foot organs, pipe organs, everything. It was truly wonderful. Just a wonderful experience for all of us. They gave us our choice of about 25 bedrooms to spend the night in, which we did. Gave us a good breakfast in the morning, and the event was over and we went on our way. And I'm 9 seconds short of 3 minutes. Happy to take questions.
Oh, that was great. Not a question exactly, John, but I have a follow-on really, because when I first started a business with some partners and we looked for space to have kind of a workshop, we were building projectors, and we moved into a place in Cambridge where the next door neighbor was kind of it was the Harvard book storage building, but the tenant that had been there recently had been a piano repair company, and they left behind a number of pianos in various states of disassembly. And for about the first 6 weeks, I would be greeting people at our front door with a panicked look on their face saying, "Where's my piano?" And I had to say, "You can take a look, but I don't know. Look, it's in that storage room, maybe."
Now, Vermont was collapsing at the time. The federal laws had made it almost impossible to continue these small dairy farms that were the heart of it. And so people were selling their goods for nothing and moving out of state, and they could find these wonderful treasures at the auctions. Some of them were very old and very interesting.
Quick question, John. What is a croquet wicket factory? Isn't a croquet wicket just a piece of bent coat hanger wire?
They may well have been the only one in the world to make a living out of bending wire into croquet wicket. They may have made the whole set nonetheless, but anyway, that's what it had been. And it employed 40 people, or at least a dormitory with 40 bedrooms. All the implausibilities of this thing, where this sort of added up, and the coincidence of a house full of organs and a splendid organist walking in the door for dinner was just really quite remarkable.
John, did you say where this was in Vermont?
We were hitchhiking north on Route 5, and the place had a view over the river, and I believe that would have made it the Connecticut River. Mm-hmm. But that's about all I know. We were spending this time being nowhere in particular, just going where we went. We loved to hop freights. We loved to work hard. So we'd go around to farms and offer to fork hay up onto trucks all day, if they'd give us dinner, things like that. It was a very nice time.
I like this hitchhiking theme we've got going.
Yes.
I think we have 2 themes, Tucker, for ongoing things. And one of them would be strange coincidences, and the other would be stories I never told my parents.
That's a good one. Well, I think we should keep going. Thank you, John. That was wonderful. We're going to end today with a treat. We have Ray Shepard back, who has just had his book published on Tuesday. At the last Sip Talk Learn, he did read from said book, and he's back to read some more. So that will be a treat. And so the name of the book is Runaway, The Daring Escape of Ona Judge. Take it away, Ray.
Thank you very much, Tucker. And Sarah, I believe you're going to be able to show illustrations?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
There you are.
Okay. Next page. We'll go to the first page. Here we go. Ona Judge, why'd you run, Ona Judge? You had fine dresses, fancy bonnets for your bushy black hair, soft shoes for your tender brown feet. Why'd you run, Ona Judge? You rode in a first-class carriage with the lady who called you her own. On Cherry Street, she took you to the best houses when she visited other important ladies. Why'd you run, Ona Judge? You were the lady's favorite. She carried you off from Mount Vernon when you were 16. Didn't ask if you wanted to go. Didn't ask if you would miss your mama. She hauled you to New York to brush her hair. She told you to Philadelphia to sew her elegant gowns. Why'd you run, Ona Judge? You ate the food that Hercules cooked for the lady's husband, George Washington. You had your own room in the president's house with a fireplace and servants to bring you wood. Why'd you run, Ona Judge? You were the color of salt water caramel with freckles of cinnamon flakes. Your hair the scent of dogwood. Your eyes shone like British coal. On Chestnut Street, men tipped their hats to you and Eliza, the president's granddaughter. They thought you were her friend. Why did you run, Ona Judge? You saw history at the dining room table when you peeked through the kitchen door. Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, warriors and diplomats who made America free. Did you think they meant you? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, any questions for Ray?
I got one.
Yeah, sure, Nate.
Sure. Thanks, Ray. I don't know yet. I have to check. But the one of my colleagues does a program for really little kids that I've only participated in a few times, where they take a book, child's book, a children's book, about. Then they read it to kids, and it's about the Statue of Liberty, and it's sort of more about welcoming people and immigration. But I don't know if we ever emailed you, and I'm not the one who makes those decisions, but I would love to do a program using that book. For elementary school kids, and we would talk to you about getting the rights and just having one of our interpreters read it out loud for kids, and then have kids react to it and talk about it at schools. But that's just a question I put out there, and then I would bother you by email some other time. But that's
please contact me. I'd be more than happy. It's a book written for first graders, second graders, third graders. It's my way of giving them a little touch of a side of history that perhaps is different for many of them.
I think it deals with that subject really well in a way that I think it's obviously very hard to deal. So thank you. That's exactly the age group that we only just do this book on the Statue of Liberty with, and we talk a bit about immigration with the Statue of Liberty. But I'd love to address that. So yeah, thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
I just wanted to.
I should mention the book is also available at the Lincoln Library and the Concord Bookstore.
And I apologize, for some reason one of the slides didn't get in, so I wanted to make sure I included this one as Ray was reading. This is the slide that was missing.
And the illustrations are by Keith Mallett, who is based in San Francisco, and they certainly help the story.
Beautiful.
Ray?
Yes.
This is Katie. So is Ona Judge a fictitious person or real?
No, I only write nonfiction. She was enslaved by Martha Washington for 23 years. This is a day in which she flees. She goes to Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And George Washington sends federal agents after to capture her. And later Martha sends her nephew to kidnap her, but she's able to escape or avoid both times, and lives the rest of her life, some 55 years in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
I see Jenny has her hand raised.
Yeah, hi Ray. I just wondered how you found her and decided to write the book about her.
Thank you. Well, when I first started writing this story, very few people had heard of her. Between the time I wrote it and found a publisher, there's been another book published called Runaway by Erica Dunbar, not Runaway, I'm sorry, Never Caught by Erica Dunbar, which is an adult book. And so there's a lot of information available on her. And if you go to the President's House in Philadelphia, you'll find information as well. So it's one of those small or lesser known individuals that will become more popular or better known over time.
Thank you.
And what I try to do is when I write about African American history, I try to take subjects or individuals who are lesser known as opposed to some of the more well-known.
Wonderful. Well, I think we probably should come to a close. It's past 5:30, but I want to thank all of the speakers today. It has really been a marvelous afternoon, and let's give them a round of applause. Is there interest in keeping this going? We had over 40 people here today. I would love to do another one, maybe two, since we have nowhere else to go in the next couple of months. So, but in order to do them, we do need speakers. So if you will go into the back of your head and see if you have a story to tell. And I think we will come up with some topics. I think that might be a fun way to do it, hitchhiking or stories you never told your mother. So that we'll put something out in the news briefs. And I want to thank Sarah so much for doing all your technical support, and also to Jenny, who was our timer extraordinaire. It's a hard job to do, to get people to stop, and you did a great job. So thank you all, and I hope this week is better than next week. Thanks for being here, and sayonara.
Thank you, Tucker.
Thank you, Tucker.
Thank you, Tucker.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Tucker.
Thanks, Tucker.
This was terrific.
Yeah, thanks and congrats to all.
How lucky we are to have all these people telling these tales. It's really fantastic.
Wonderful evening. Thank you very much, Tucker.